That beeping is driving me nuts. Has the Tesla Model Y already had its day? Because this is the new Volvo EX30 and it promises to have the simplistic design and also the muscle of electric power, just like that Tesla. So in 2024, is this handsome Swede the electric crossover you should be buying? We're going to find out. So in this review, we're going to test if the EX30 is as practical as a Volvo should be, whether it's fun to drive, and whether it's worth going for this twin motor model and its massive amounts of power, or whether you're better off sticking with the single motor version. But first, let's talk about one of the standout features of this new Volvo, and that is its design, because I think it does the Volvo thing very well, and somehow it looks more sensible and more understated than the very racy looking Alfa Romeo Jr, and yet way more interesting to look at than the slightly awkward Tesla Model Y. And that's helped quite a lot by the fact that we have some very cool design features. Now at the front, it is very obviously an EV. There's no fake grille up front here. And then you've got these really cool day running lights in this very cool lighting design as well. I like these day running slats. They are mirrored at the back of the car. And I also really like the fact that we have some genuine aerodynamic effort going on here. There is a cutout here and it actually exits through here so the airflow can be cleaned and it makes the car slipperier and should give you better range, as should the very cleanly designed alloy wheels. I'm not sure I like the fact there's no badge in the middle, but I get why they're so smooth. It helps you with efficiency. Same goes actually for the design of these mirrors. There's no wraparound on the edges. They're very clean and it just adds to that vibe. And then when you come back here, you'll notice that the door line on the rear actually cuts into the wheel arch, which is pretty rare. Most cars sort of curve around with it. This one cuts into these almost frameless wheel arches, so it all kind of feels nice and cohesive. And then at the back, I very much like the lighting tech on this car. This kind of mirrors what we saw on the front, but with obviously red. So it's a nice design, and you can see as well the indicators look quite cool. And it's also quite handy that you have a button on the rear boot here, because the key of this car, it doesn't have any buttons at all, so that can make it quite awkward to wake the car up and be like, let me in. But thankfully for the boot, Volvo's got you covered, because it's put the button in a place where it shouldn't get too dirty, if it works. Keyless cars, man. Right, let's try and wake it up. Oh, look. I'm sure there's a better way of doing it, and if you know it, please put it in the comments, but why are there no buttons on the key? It just makes it so annoying. Now, while the EX30 doesn't have the biggest boot in the class, it does have enough room for a, I don't know, weekend or week away for a couple suitcase. So it's usable, and it gets more usable when you remove the boot floor. You can lift it up and use it for underfloor storage. You can hide away your charge cables, but you can also remove this floor entirely, so you've got quite a deep boot. Although I have to admit, this lip here is quite thick, so for a dog it might not be the easiest to jump inside, but at least you do have a bit of storage space under the bonnet as well, so you can put smaller items there, although it's not spacious enough for the charge cables. And rest assured, we did try and squeeze them in. Talking of squeezing, it is a bit of a squash in the back of the EX30. I mean, my legs are bent at a pretty acute angle here because this seat is quite chunky and, well, the seat's set as I like it and it's quite small in here. Or at least that's true for down below. If you had passengers alongside you, it'd be a squeeze. But then actually, conversely, up top, you've got loads and loads of headroom. I mean, this extended sunroof, which is actually nice, creates a nice airy feel to the cabin. It gives me loads of room above my head here. And then you've also got a few nifty storage areas as well. So you've got some pretty narrow door pockets, which aren't big enough to take a water bottle, but then you've got a nice padded pocket behind the seats, so you could put your bottle in there. And then you've got some smaller areas. You've got one down here, which is below your window switches and also a pair of USB-C ports. And then you've got a little storage spot down here next to the seats. And then you've got a very generously sized storage space under the front armrest, which is kind of shared with the front passengers. So in the back here, it's okay. But do you know what? I noticed we've got these coat hood hangers here, and it tells me that maybe this car is intended for your company car buyers, the sort who need to keep their shirt nice and straight and pressed before the next meeting. Now, by contrast to the rear, the front feels a lot more spacious in this Volvo EX30, although if you cover the badge here, you could confuse it for a Tesla, because I think Volvo has definitely done a bit of copying. Some of it good and some of it not so good. So let's run through the good stuff first. Now, I like the fact that the dash is simplistic in its design. It's nice and clean, very Swedish. And I like the fact that some bits of plastic and panels sort of join together to form new things. For example, these air vents, which are sort of made from two separate bits of dash. I also like the fact that it just uses a very eco-friendly layout. I like the fact that we've got some low CO2 plastics here. It feels a bit cheap and definitely looks a lot like my reusable coffee cup. Like, that material here is basically identical, but I get the eco credentials, especially in an electric car. But what I don't get, and this is definitely a thing copied from the Tesla, is the fact that you don't have an instrument cluster ahead of me here. I like to be able to see my driving information at the eye line I've got when I'm looking at the road ahead, and here I have to peer across to the infotainment screen, which is very annoying. Although I have to admit, the infotainment system itself is really, really good. It's very fast to use, and because it uses Google software, you've got recognizable apps, including Google Maps and Waze, so anyone who uses a smartphone is going to recognize the stuff in this. Although weirdly, both Jamil, who runs Google, and myself, who runs an Apple phone, we couldn't get it to work, neither wirelessly as it's supposed to, or when we plug in with the USB-Cs. Turns out that Apple CarPlay is due to be added in an over-the-air update that our press car hadn't yet received. But, interestingly, Android Auto isn't planned to be supported because Android users can just log into their account directly via the car's infotainment. At least the system itself is very recognizable otherwise. So I like the fact that, for example, I can access my cameras very easily. I can look at my review around the car. So parking in an IKEA car park like this is very easy indeed. Although I'm not sure about, for example, having the glove box button on the screen itself. So I've got to press the button here to open the glove box, which is very Tesla-esque, and the glove box itself isn't the biggest. But the rest of the cabin, well, up front is pretty spacious. I've got a lot of storage room here, tons down here, got a wireless charging mat, and actually, before I go on to that, your USB-C ports are hidden away down there, and you've even got this pretty nifty cup holder system down here, and it can be turned into just a storage system as well. It's got multiple settings, which is quite cool. And the door pockets are massive. They're way bigger than the ones in the back, so my water bottle goes in, no problems whatsoever. And then your place to store your phone, well, you've got a little bit of space down here, but the wireless charging side is on this side, and it comes with a nifty rubber press here, keeping your phone pressed up against the charger, which is handy because this EX30 in twin motor spec really shits. With over 400 horsepower, this EX30 with its dual motors will crack 62 miles an hour in barely over 3 seconds. This is supercar fast in a straight line. And don't forget, Volvo does have form in the world of high-performance, practical family cars. Think back to the 90s when it made those excellent super estates with turbocharged 5-cylinder engines and noises to go with their monumental straight-line performance. This doesn't make a noise, but it has performance to make even those really, really fast Volvos feel not that quick. Oh my God. It does somewhat contrast the slightly chilled vibe of the rest of the car, I must confess. I mean, of course, you can drive it more sensibly, and you do ask sometimes, do I need the rapid performance this thing offers? Could I just go for the single motor model? And yes, I do think having that car in its slightly higher range would be the more sensible option, but, well, put it this way. He's out the way, and I can do this. Oh, I think my lung just fell out. It's somewhere back there. The key thing is, though, is that you can use that performance in a slightly more sensible way. It can just be used to get you out into spaces more safely, or, for example, to accelerate you off of a slip road, especially one where maybe you don't have much of a run-up. It means this car feels extremely effortless like a McLaren, but if you don't put your foot down and you just drive it and use the effortlessness in a Volvo-like way, well then, it's just easy to drive. You do have a one-pedal driving mode that's strong enough to bring the car to a complete halt, and that really takes the effort out of driving. And it's doubly true if you use the car's cruise assist tech, which can even control the accelerator, albeit with a tendency to be a bit jerky. It certainly contrasts the smoothness of the cinch buying experience, not least because by visiting our website or downloading our app, you're just a handful of clicks away from finding your perfect next motor. That is, of course, unless you want to test drive first, well then you should give our cinch stores a call. Now, old quick Volvos weren't exactly known for their great handling. They had grip, they could go down a motorway like nothing else, but, well, around the bends, those especially front-wheel drive models, well, they did struggle a little bit. So shall we see how this electric car, with its a large amount of heft, over 1.9 tons worth of the stuff, let's see how it goes around the bends, shall we? So here's a corner coming up. You don't have adjustable suspension on this car, so it is in just one setting the whole time. You know what, it stays fairly flat through the bends, and you can carry some pace into the corners, and actually the grip feels great. It feels really positive on the nose. This is not a hyper-reactive, fun crossover from the electric world like the Alfa Romeo Junior. If you like driving in the true enthusiast sense, the Alfa Romeo Junior is way more fun than this car. But if you like your Model Y Teslas because they just have that blunt performance with loads of grip, this thing does a good job of replicating it. That beeping is driving me nuts. Ah yes, the speed limit and lane assist bongs that all new cars in Europe have are very much present in this new Volvo. But unlike other brands such as Renault and Alfa Romeo, there's no one-touch button to switch them all off. In the EX30, you have to dive into the menus every time you start the car. Annoying. Brakes are nice and progressive as well. The regen, as I said, the one pedal driving is actually very good, but if you need to use the anchors, well, they're progressive, they're predictable, and it doesn't matter how you're driving, they just feel as you'd hope, which is consistent. Steering is nice and light as well. There is no feel in this car, and you can make the weighting much heavier, but I've got it in the softest mode because what's the point of weighting up electric steering when there's no feel? It's completely pointless. So it's nice and effortless in that regard, and it does give you a sense of agility. I like the steering wheel in this car and the shape as well. It just feels the right size. Just makes the car feel a little bit easier to chuck down a country road if that's your thing. Oof, quick. Thank you, fellow Volvo driver. Probably thinking, what was that? It's a blurry Volvo. Ride quality is good as well. I mean, I've heard reports of other people saying that this is a bit heavy on roads, but actually on this bumpy British B road, I think it rides pretty nicely actually. Certainly comparable with other cars in this class. It does a really good job of ironing out all the high frequency bumps, you know, the little pitter-passery stuff that we have tons of in the UK. And then conversely, when it comes to the bigger bumps, well, actually, it does a pretty good job of dealing with those as well. Road noise is quite low, and the fact that you've got driver assistance features on this car makes even cruising down a motorway a very relaxing experience. Although just as important as how it drives is how far this will go between charges. And well, according to WLTP, the EX30 will do 279 miles of range in this dual motor version. And the single motor version will go further still with close to 300 miles of range. Although the Tesla Model Y, annoyingly for Volvo, still beats both of the versions quite comfortably with way over 300 miles possible. And also, when it comes to charging, well, the EX30 is pretty good actually. It will take a 150 kilowatt plug, so you'll get 10 to 80% charging in about 28 minutes. But, well, Tesla Model Y beats them still. So, if it comes to charging convenience or even just range, well, the Model Y is still the better car. It's only when you take into account that the build quality, the fit and finish in this very sustainable interior is definitely a step above the Tesla that this EX30 is a really good electric car, so long as you're not squashed into those tiny back seats. Although, as much as I like this and as much as that Tesla is a great car, if you're like me and your priority is on sporty handling, this is going to be the car for you.